Good morning, y'all. So, we are going to see how much of Jonah we can get through before I have to log in to work. So, this is the She Reads Truth CSB Bible. And yeah. But before we get into Jonah, I do want to I'm moving my highlighters and whatnot. I do want to give a little historical background on Jonah, and this is information that I got from my Bible dictionary. So this is a different Bible. This is the Illustrated Bible, and yeah, so I already have annotated Jonah in here, but I do want to annotate it into my She Reads Truth Bible. So, Jonah. That's the author. Date 780 BC. Historical setting: Israel had been victims of Assyrian incursions since the 9th century BC. Now, in a weakened state, Israel and Judah experience a time of strength and prosperity. Like Jonah, many in Israel or Judah would have been apathetic or positively hostile to God's cure for Nineveh, a major city and a one time capital of Assyria. Jonah, prophet of Israel. I can't read what the rest of that says, but Jonah, it means dove. So he prophesied during the time of I don't know what that says. We're not even going to go there. From 793 to 753 BC. Major themes: God's power, purposes, and mercy exceed the perceptions his people have of him. God's people can be highly provincial in the way they view people outside their circle of acquaintance. God has ways of enlarging his people's understanding of what he is doing and their heart for joining him in what he is doing. So I am going to be referencing some of my notes from my Illustrated Bible as we get into Jonah. And what I like about this is it gives you kind of like an overview and then it gives you a timeline. Some of them give maps if it's a book that's talking about moving from one place to another, if it's talking about migrating. For example, Exodus would have a map. So, yeah, it kind of gives you just a little bit of that. Nahum's prophecy against Nineveh. So, Jonah travels to Nineveh. So, a lot of these prophets are contemporary from what I have been reading. They will mention other prophets. So, they prophesied around the same time. And more than likely, they knew each other. So, I thought that was pretty cool. All right, so as we go through, I'm not going to really get into the devotions that they have, but just know that these do come with devotions in them, like throughout. So they have one here, and they have another one here, and that's it. So Jonah is very short; it's only 4 chapters. So let's get into it. The first chapter, Jonah's flight. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai, get up. And I'll typically will circle that and make a note that that is a command. He didn't say please get up. He just said get up with an exclamation point. Get up. Go to the great city of Nineveh. And so that he's giving him instructions. Why does he want him to go there? To preach against it because their evil has come up before me. So the people in Nineveh are being extremely wicked. And God is like, look, no, Jonah, get up and go. Get up and go, right? So I'll make a note here that this is instructions. My handwriting's not the best. I probably can't see that. And then I'll make a note here, underline this. And because that is why he has to go. Jonah got up to flee to Tarshish from the Lord's presence. Now, listen, we know that God, Yahuwah, is all seeing, right? So the fact that he thought that he can get up and flee to Tarshish from the Lord's presence, he really thought that he could just be out. No, he sees everything. There is nowhere on this earth that you can hide, right? Nowhere. he will see you. He will absolutely see you. So I do want to highlight that because it's crazy. So Jonah got up to flee to Tarshish from the Lord's presence. He went down to Joppa, found a ship going to Tarshish. He paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the Lord's presence. So the fact that he found a ship going to Tarshish, these are strangers, right? These are strangers. So he just went with, he would rather go with random strangers than to do what God told him to do. So I'll just make a note over here. So Jonah really thought that he could hide and would rather go with strangers. Now, my thing is specifically why Tarshish. That's not something that I don't really know why he went there and why he went in that direction. I don't know if he felt like he could hide better from him there. I don't know. But let's get into verse 4. But the Lord threw a great wind into the sea, and such a great storm arose on the sea that the ship threatened to break apart. So you thought you could run. And God was like, no, I'm going to make this passage difficult for you. And the thing is, by him causing the waves to be so strong and for there to be such a strong storm, there's a purpose for that. He's setting this up for what's about to happen to Jonah, because we know what happened to Jonah. We know exactly what happened to him, but he's setting the scene of how he got to where he ended up, right? So the sailors were afraid and each cried out to his God. Let's make a note of that. Each cried out to his God. I'm going to note that these are false gods. Each cried out to his God. So that means that they're multiple. That's why I put false gods. So each person, I don't know how many sailors are on this ship, but they each cried out to his God. So that means that each person either has a God or what have you, but there's multiple of them. And one thing that has always confused me about people in the Bible who worship other gods, it's like your gods don't really do anything. Like, yes, they have some sort of power, but they don't have power like Yahuwah does, right? They don't have power like him. So they threw the ship's cargo into the sea to lighten the load, thinking that that was going to help. First of all, the ship is not sinking, right? Yes, it threatened to break apart, but at this point, it's not sinking. And throwing the load into the water doesn't make sense. That's not what's causing the ship to be rocking back and forth and moving violently. It is the storm. So the cargo, that is, and this is the thing. That's what happens when we get so afraid. We start doing things that do not make sense. We start doing the wildest, the dumbest things when we're afraid. And then once we get past that, we're like, why did I do that? That was stupid. Why would I do that? So it doesn't make sense that they're throwing out the cargo as if that's going to help with the storm. It's a storm. Let's be real. It is a storm. No. Meanwhile, Jonah had gone down to the lowest part of the vessel and had stretched out and fallen into a deep sleep. Now, pause. Okay, pause. Doesn't this remind you of something? That he had fallen into a deep sleep, stretched out and fallen into a deep sleep. What are you doing asleep? Get up, call to your God. Maybe this God will consider us and we won't perish. So obviously they knew that Jonah was not like them. He was a stranger. So they assumed that he had a different God. And this, there's an A here. And in the footnote, it says, or God with a capital G. But I do want to pause there. And let's see if we can find Um, the I think it's in Matthew. I always get confused on like which story is where. Um, okay. Right here. Oh, I turned right to it. So, this is Matthew chapter 8, verse 23. As he got into the boat, his disciples followed him. Suddenly, a violent storm arose on the sea, so that the boat was being swamped by the waves. But Jesus kept sleeping. So, the disciples came and woke him up, saying, Lord, save us. We're going to die. He said to them, Why are you afraid? You of little faith. Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. The men were amazed and asked, What kind of man is this? Even the winds and sea obey him. So, with that, I will make a note in Jonah for Matthew 8, verses 23 through 27. And I'll just highlight that. I was like, wait a minute, that reminds me of when Jesus did the same thing. So I'll just make a little note of that. And I love when I'm reading and I come across something, I was like, wait, this happened at a different part of the Bible. You know, this is in the Old Testament. What happened with Jesus was in the New Testament. So I love when I can read and it reminds me of something that either Jesus did. Most of the time it's something that Jesus did. But yeah, let's continue. Come on, the sailors said to each other, let's cast lots. Then we'll know who is to blame for this trouble we're in. So they cast lots, and the lots singled out Jonah. Now, the lots didn't single out Jonah. God did. God singled him out. He told on him. Absolutely. So I will make a note of that to the side. Now, what I love about when God punishes people, he really sets the scene. He really sets the scene of like what's happening, right? So they cast lots. We're starting here. So he gets into the ship with these strangers, right? He causes this great storm. The ship is about to break apart. They're throwing stuff over the side as if that's going to stop the ship from breaking apart. That's stupid. Um, Jonah is asleep. They're upset, like, why are you asleep? How can you be asleep while we're going through this? But I think in some way that they had an inkling that maybe he was the cause for this. Get up, call to your God, because they called to their gods and nothing was happening. So he's the only one who hasn't called to his God, you know? And then they cast lots, and then we find out that it is Jonah. And so the next part, then he said to them, Tell us who is to blame for this trouble we're in. What is your business and where are you from? What is your country and what people are you from? So now, this man that they didn't let onto this ship, they don't know who he is, where he came from, the people he came from. He's a complete stranger. And they are just now realizing he's a stranger. He got on the ship with these people who could have been pirates, right? They could have tried to unalive him, you know, but he's sitting here on this ship and now they're mad because, like, first, now it's you. Obviously, it's you that's the reason for this. Now tell us, why is this happening? What are you doing? What is your business? Where are you going? Why are you going there? Why are you on this ship? What is it? He answered them, I'm a Hebrew. I worship or fear the Lord, the God of the heavens, who made the sea and the dry land. Yes. But listen to the next part, verse 10. Then the men were seized by a great fear and said to him, What have you done? Obviously, they know that it's Jonah's fault. And now that he's telling them that he worships the God who created the seas, and this sea is going back and forth violently, and there's a storm. So they're like, you must have done something that made him mad, that now we're about to die because of you. What did you do? What did you do that now we're here? What happened? I would have been scared too. Well, one, I wouldn't have been scared. I would have been mad. I would have been very upset. The men knew he was fleeing from the Lord's presence because he had told them. So they said to him, what should we do to you so that the sea will calm down for us? For the sea was getting worse and worse. Okay, so let's back up. So he tells them that he's a Hebrew. He worships the Lord, the God of the heavens, who made the sea and the dry land. So him telling them that scared them. They knew it, they knew immediately that he had done something. And so then he tells them that he's fleeing from the Lord's presence because he had told. First of all, I would not admit that out loud, um, because you're basically telling them why they're about to die because of you, because you decided to run from the Lord. Like, it makes me have the assumption that these men do not run from their gods. Um, yeah, that's my only assumption about that. So now they want to do something to him because you have caused this. Obviously, we need to do something to you. I'm going to underline the men were seized by a great fear. Because who wouldn't be scared? I'd be scared and mad. Because you mean to tell me that you're running from your God and now you have gotten us caught up in your mess and your drama? I'd be highly upset. Now, I don't know if this was like, this next part was like a, a suicide mission, but he answered them, pick me up and throw me into the sea so that it will calm down for you. For I know that I'm to blame for this great storm that is against you. Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to get back to dry land, but they couldn't because the sea was raging against them more and more. Now, he done told y'all that he is the reason for this storm, right? My thing, I would immediately throw him off. As soon as he said that, first of all, when he said up here, when he told them that he was fleeing from the Lord's presence, that he's to blame for this and that the Lord is doing this, he would have immediately been thrown off. I wouldn't have had to think, what should I do with him? Get off. Get off. Goodbye. No, you got to go. So I do want to make a note here that he told them what to do, but they didn't listen. He told them that he was to blame. He told them that throw him in the water, but they decided, we're going to keep trying. Because my thing is, they're probably thinking if we throw this man in the water, he worships the Lord who created the waters and created the storm that we're currently going through. If we throw him in the water, then something more disastrous will happen to us. I'm going to assume that was their thinking of why they didn't immediately throw him into the water. It makes sense to me that they would think that because obviously this man is on the boat and God is mad. He's running from God. He is to blame. He's causing the storm. They're afraid of him. So they didn't immediately throw him in the water. So they called out to the Lord, please, Lord, don't let us perish because of this man's life, and don't charge us with innocent blood. Now, hold on. Now, first, They cried out to their own gods up here. Now they're crying out to the Lord. See how they switched up? Don't charge us with innocent blood, for you, Lord, have done just as you pleased. Right? So they're praying that they don't reap any kind of consequences for throwing him over. Right? So my thing here is that they know something about God. They know something about his nature. They know something about what kind of God he is. For them to say, please, Lord, don't let us perish because of this man's life, and don't charge us with innocent blood, because they are about to kill him. And not really, but they're about to throw him over. For you, Lord, have done just as you please. Of course, he always does as he pleases. I mean, he's God. Like, what do you mean? Then they picked up Jonah and threw him into the sea, and the sea stopped its raging. The men were seized by great fear of the Lord, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows. How do they know that if they worship other gods? How do they know that? How do they know to offer sacrifice and make a vow to God if they worship other gods? These are the things that come to mind when I'm reading, like how, like, I question these people because how? So I'm going to make a note here that they prayed to not be killed for throwing Jonah overboard. And I'm also going to write that question that I had of the men were seized by great fear of the Lord. They offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows. How do they know to offer sacrifices? Now, granted, yes, they offer sacrifices to their own gods, but how? I guess my question is, yes, they offer sacrifices to their own God, but how would they know that this God requires sacrifices? And it says they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows. So that sacrifice would have been Jonah by throwing him overboard. That was the sacrifice. So they offered a sacrifice. Jonah is a sacrifice. And then my question, how did they know to offer a sacrifice? Now, I just want y'all to know that in my Bible that I showed y'all at the beginning, the illustrated Bible, I did not come to that revelation until just now as I was talking. And that's sometimes how it happens when I'm doing Bible study, is that I'll be reading something and then I'll be talking out loud to God, and then it's like through me talking, he answers my question. Like the answer comes out of my own mouth, but it comes from him. See, I didn't come to that realization until just now. I just want y'all to know that. So, they prayed because of what they were about to do, right? And then the thing is, when they said that you have done just as you pleased, they're talking about the storm. And then picked up Jonah, threw him into the sea, and the sea stopped its raging. The men were seized by great fear of the Lord, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows. Now, my thing is, what kind of vows? What vow did they make? Did they make a vow to stop worshiping the gods that they worship? Did they make a vow to turn from their wicked ways? What kind of vow? And so I'll make that note here. What kind of vows? The Lord appointed a great fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Now, growing up, we were told that Jonah was in the belly of a whale. I don't know any translation that says that he was in the belly of a whale. It just says great fish. We don't know what kind of fish it was. We know it's not a regular fish that we would eat and put on our plate. No, a great fish. Don't know. I think that people have the assumption that it was a whale because it says great, but You cannot put what is not in here, right? That's just like with Adam and Eve when they ate the fruit from the tree. If you've seen any kind of pictorial representation, specifically in children's Bibles, they'll have them eating an apple. The Bible doesn't say anything about an apple. It doesn't. I don't know why they told us that as kids, that, it was an apple that we don't know what kind of fruit it was. We don't. Have no idea because the Bible does not specify what it was. But yeah, the Lord appointed a great fish. Now, notice this word appointed. So he chose a fish out of all the sea creatures in the ocean and the sea. Well, on that side of the world, it's called a sea. Over here, it's called ocean. But in the sea, all the sea creatures, out of all of them, he appointed a great fish. He chose one. He was like, which one of y'all do I want to swallow Jonah? And not eat him, just swallow him. He wasn't trying to kill him. So he was like, you're not big enough. You're not big enough. You're a little too small. Your mouth is not big enough. I wonder if that's like what was going through his head as he was trying to choose the fish that was going to swallow Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. And the importance of the number 3, we see that so many times in the Bible. So many times for different things. And we all know the importance of the number 3. We do. So Jonah's prayer. Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the belly of the fish. I called to the Lord in my distress, and he answered me. I cried out for help from deep inside Sheol, or from the stomach of. Now, Sheol is the valley of death, right? You heard my voice. When you threw me into the depths, into the heart of the seas, the currents, or river, overcame me. All your breakers and your billows swept over me. So right here, he's talking about when he was thrown overboard. He says, when you threw me into the depths, because he caused the men to do it. They didn't do it on their own accord. He caused the men to throw them in. So this was when he was thrown overboard. And here he says, I called to the Lord in my distress, and he answered me. Now, I'm not sure when he's talking about this, because he fled. He did not call out to the Lord anywhere in here, so I'm not sure what he's referring to. I cried out for help from deep inside Sheol, you heard my voice. So my assumption is that he's talking about these things in past tense. So this was written, of course, after he came out of the fish. So I'm assuming that he called to the Lord in his distress while he was in the belly of the fish. So this may have just been him recounting what happened while he was there. I mean, what did he have to do for those 3 days and 3 nights? And first of all, I know it probably smelled in the belly of the fish. I know it was like slimy. The belly of the fish, when he says deep inside Sheol, so Sheol, the valley of death, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, the fish had eaten other creatures, sea creatures, may have eaten other humans who have fell into the sea. So he's in the belly of this fish, and he is in a valley of death, the pit of death. So that's what he's referring to. And I said, I have been banished from your sight. Yet I will look, or will I look, once more toward your holy temple. The water engulfed me up to the neck, or threatening my life. The watery depths overcame me. Seaweed was wrapped around my head. I sank to the foundations of the mountains. So that would have been prior to being in the belly of the fish, because the foundations of the mountains would have been like the sea floor. The earth's gates shut behind me forever. So he thought he was going to die. Then you raised my life from the pit, the belly of the fish, Lord my God. As my life was fading away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you, to your holy temple. Those who cherish worthless idols abandon their faithful love, which would be God, because his love is faithful. But as for me, I will sacrifice to you with a voice of thanksgiving. I will fulfill what I have vowed. Salvation or deliverance belongs to the Lord. Then the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto dry land. So let's go back up here. And I said, I have been banished from your sight. So he's thinking that he's going to die. So he's in the waters. He's thinking he's going to die. He's in the belly of the fish. When a big fish opens its mouth, it does take in a bunch of water. There's water inside of it because it lives in the ocean. So when he's saying that the water engulfed me up to my neck, he's in the belly of this fish that has a bunch of water in it. If you think about, and I understand why they assume that it's a whale. If you think about when a whale opens its mouth like let's say the biggest whale. I don't know what the biggest one is. And when they open their mouth, a bunch of water goes in. So along with Jonah came a bunch of water. So moving on, it says the seaweed was wrapped around my head. So aside from the water that goes into the mouth of the fish, there's seaweed, there's fish, there's probably coral. Whatever is floating in the sea is also going to go into the fish with him. That's how it works. So as my life was fading away, so essentially drowning, I remember the Lord, and my prayer came to you, to your holy temple. So when it says I remember the Lord and my prayer came to you, to your holy temple, if he's in the belly of this fish, then he must have been praying in his mind, because I mean, he opens his mouth, there's just gonna be nothing but water. Those who cherish worthless idols abandon their faithful love. So he's not talking about himself. But as for me, I will sacrifice to you with a voice of thanksgiving. So all of his offerings will go to Yahweh. I will fulfill what I have vowed, whatever his vow was, which I'm assuming would be listening to what God told him to do. Salvation belongs to the Lord, because only he can deliver. So banished from your sight. First of all, nobody can be banished from the Lord's sight. He sees everybody. Like, he can turn his back on you, but he sees everybody. He sees everything. He knows all that is going on. Yes. And I don't think that I will have time to do chapter 3, because I do have to log into work. So I'll probably come back on my lunchtime to do chapters 3 and 4. And I know I didn't go over this, but I'm using midliners. So they have two sides. So they have the sides you highlight with, and then they have the other side where you can like underline or just write with. All right, so, and then right here, Yahuwah heard his prayer in his mind. And my thing is, what was Jonah eating for those 3 days and 3 nights? Because everything that was in the belly of the fish was dead. What was he eating? And that is chapters 1 and 2. I do also want to make a note too, which says 3 days and 3 nights. So, what was he eating, or he could have been fasting? Because I would fast. I'm not eating anything that this whale has already chewed up and digested. I would fast. I would just fast. No food, no water for 3 days. Many people did it in the Bible. No food and water for 3 days. So I hope that y'all have enjoyed this. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. I will try to get back on during my lunchtime to go over chapters 3 and 4 because they're really short. So it shouldn't take too long. And I might go over the devotionals as well.